Good evening, and welcome to Silver Screen Slam, a movie review show like no other, where I analyze those fun-filled adventures everyone can relate to. I'm your expert film critic, Jake Brown, here to welcome you to the exciting world of creative and conventional moving pictures. So come join me each episode as I review movies of the past and present and determine what's good and what's bad about them. After each episode, I will ask you, my loyal viewers, to show your support to the show by subscribing to me via my social media outlets at the bottom of your screen. With that being said, follow me. During each episode, I'll review a major motion picture that I feel deserves a strong, critical eye on what it brings to the screen. This may be a new release, a not-so-new release, or even one of the classics. In my previous episode, I reviewed the 2004 smart, sexy romance flick Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, directed by Michel Gondry and starring Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet. I initially declared the film virtually perfect, having no significant faults. However, I've since opened my eyes and have realized it isn't a perfect movie by any means, being a little too overly ambitious, but it's definitely still worthy of praise as a unique film in general. In this episode, I'll review the 2010 must-see graffiti art documentary Exit Through the Gift Shop. But before I get into my critical opinion of the film, let's first talk some extras. Considering this episode's movie as a documentary, it's different from my previously reviewed films. After all, documentaries are funny things. They tend to represent a different viewpoint of a story, a supposedly realistic one, relying on the viewer to trust the filmmaker to present the most factual account of events to the screen, while also creatively expressing themselves within this more restricted approach. So what happens when a documentary strays from the truth? What do we take it as then? You know, this has always been a fascinating thought to me. How are we, as trusting viewers, supposed to judge documentaries? 2005's Loose Change video, which claims that the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks on America were a conspiracy cover-up by the U.S. government, is based almost entirely on misinformation, leading it to a completely false conclusion. 2007's Zeitgeist also handles this topic, and others, just as carelessly, if not even more so. Even Al Gore's 2006 documentary An Inconvenient Truth, while warning of the very real and serious human-caused threat of global warming, inflates and sidesteps some of the facts while doing so. With examples like these, and many others, I've ultimately found it much less effort to get myself lost in a fictional film. Even when the popular claim is made that a work of fiction is inspired or based on a true story, it's somewhat universally known that it'll almost always miss at least some of the facts. Hell, one of my favorite horror films of all time, 1974's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, claims to center on real-life events, yet director Tobe Hooper has since casually stated that the film was actually not based off of a real Texas family full of butchers and cannibals, but instead was a combination of minor aspects of a select few inspirations in the real world and Hooper and company's own imaginations. I might just have to delve deeper into this movie in a future episode. Fiction is easier. But with documentaries, the foundation of a supposedly factual setting is already laid before the viewer even has a chance to get involved in the film. It's much more difficult for the viewer to shrug off the events depicted on screen as nothing more than a made-up tale. And with that, I step up on my box full of soap in the best interest of my viewers to state that when watching a documentary, it is important to bear in mind that the writer, or writers, of this work is completely free to make up anything they want about what is ultimately presented on screen. After all, this isn't a peer-reviewed scientific paper, or a reputable news source, or a politician on opposite day. This is whatever the artist wants it to be. Just look at Zeitgeist. Written by, directed by, produced by, edited by, music composed, all by one man. One guy put nearly this entire documentary together. Does this single person somehow have all the answers no one else does? It's highly doubtful. Therefore, it behooves us as viewers to completely clear our foundation of any realistic expectations when going into a documentary, so as to better appreciate it as a work of art. Unless in the case of Loose Change and Zeitgeist, it's complete crap altogether. Taking all of this into consideration, the inevitable question pops into one's mind when reviewing a film of this genre. What makes a good documentary? I'm glad you asked, Jake. What a great guy, so knowledgeable, just the person I look to for intelligent, witty movie reviews. And this question brings me to my featured flick of the episode, 2010's art dissection documentary Exit Through the Gift Shop. Exit Through the Gift Shop was directed by street graffiti artist Banksy and stars Banksy himself, as well as many other notable graffiti artists of the urban underworld. The story begins with a Frenchman named Terry Guetta who loves to record any and every aspect of his daily life, finding it almost impossible to put his camera down. He also owns a vintage shop in LA where he sells low to moderate quality clothing for high prices to celebrities and non-celebrities alike. But it's when Terry takes a trip back home to France that he discovers a cousin of his is actually a well-known graffiti artist named Space Invader, who utilizes mostly 80s-themed mosaic tiles to express himself throughout the streets of France and other parts of the world. Through his cousin, Terry quickly finds a new thrill in life and begins recording every moment he can of his and Invader's adventures. Soon enough, Invader introduces Terry to many other famed street artists as Terry slowly becomes, really, the only known name in what he proclaims as street art documenting. But there is one elusive figure Terry can't seem to capture, and that is the most famous yet invisible face in all of this art form's many participants, Banksy. That is, until Banksy takes a trip to LA and finds that he needs someone to show him to some good blank canvases around town. Terry immediately jumps at the offer and guides his former white whale around, all the while filming every second he can of such a golden opportunity. But it's when Banksy asks Terry to try some art of his own, prompting Terry to create the moniker for himself of Mr. Brainwash, that the viewer is taken on a table-turning journey through the film's ultimate message. Let's take a quick look at a clip.
Now, Tate Britain in Pimlico refused to discuss security arrangements today after a graffiti artist known as Banksy was able to leave one of his own paintings in the gallery's landscape room.
I hear about this Banksy. Who's Banksy, this. And I said, I really like that guy, you know. And it's like, I want to interview this guy.
As Terry persevered with his quest to capture the world of street art in its entirety, the profile of the one artist who eluded him was about to become bigger than ever.
He faced Israeli army fire to pull off his latest stunt, subversive graffiti artist Banksy, whose work...
By targeting the world's most notorious wall, Banksy turned a spot of hit-and-run vandalism into an international news event. Now it seemed everyone wanted to know the answer to one question. Who was Banksy?
So what is Exit Through the Gift Shop's message? Well, it's a message that is simple yet complex, accusing yet hypocritical. It's a message that bases itself off of one question. What is art? Now, I want my viewers to take a moment to think about this question. What is art? Aside from some general guidelines, the answer to this question is almost always one based off of opinion. You like funny man Kevin James, I like funny man Kevin Smith. You like TV's Law & Order, I like TV's Hannibal. You like Canadian parody group Nickelback, I like Canadian rock gods Rush. Is either one of us more factually correct than the other? Of course not. But that's what makes art so bittersweet. Who's to say what good art is? In Exit Through the Gift Shop, Banksy seemingly makes the bold declaration that he, over all others, is the one who knows what real art is. Or does he? There are layers buried within the story that I find other viewers often miss. See, this film is like no other in that it takes something that many of us claim to know so much about and then turns right around and twists such a notion completely on its head. The subtle self-reflection and humble awareness offered up by the film's end will leave your mind racing and your body still, mouth agape. But what about other aspects of the movie? What about the acting? Is there acting? Who is Terry Guetta? Is he really the character portrayed on screen, or is he something entirely different? And this leads me back to what I discussed earlier about documentaries, and it's something that truly sets this film apart from so many others. Wondering whether or not Mr. Brainwash is a real person is nothing more than tasty icing on one of the most delicious cakes you could ever eat, as the story makes it very clear that the cake itself, that profound message I mentioned earlier, is what really matters. So yes, this documentary, much like my show, is one of the best of our generation. But there's got to be something bad about it, right? Well, not necessarily. When this movie came out, it was an instant classic, an exhilarating film the whole family could enjoy. Exit Through the Gift Shop redefines the language of cinema. It knows what it wants to be. We're talking a high-octane, on-the-edge-of-your-seat thrill ride through such a thought-provoking topic, riveting and inspiring. And while it may be considered controversial to some, I think it's safe to call it the feel-good film of the century. But don't take my word for it. What does the public have to say about this movie? Actually, strike that. I think my expert opinion should really be the final word when it comes to this film. And with that, what other documentary is there to recommend for those who appreciate Exit Through the Gift Shop? Actually, two come to mind. The first being 2007's The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, directed by Seth Gordon. King of Kong offers an insightful glimpse into the world of competitive arcade gaming. Watch as the arrogant reigning Donkey Kong high score champ Billy Mitchell tries to defend his title against the humble underdog Steve Wiebe. As the film progresses, this strange new world starts to look more and more familiar, as politics, deception, and a strong tribal mentality all begin to show their ugly faces. And by its finish, these clashing characters explode in one hell of an ending. But it's not just the twist on a classic story that helps this movie stand out, it's also that nagging elephant-sized question: did this actually happen? Once again, that's what I love about these types of documentaries. They work so well with or without a basis in truth, with the possibility of authenticity being only an added benefit. The second recommendation of this style is 2012's The Imposter, directed by Bart Layton. The Imposter tells of a Texas family who, after their 13-year-old son goes missing 3 years prior, receive a call from Spain with the message that their boy has been found. But it's soon discovered that this boy is actually a con artist from France in his mid-20s. But it's when this information begins to show itself that the focus is then turned toward the family, as their reactions start to warrant serious concern. The style of storytelling and the choice of timing in The Imposter set it apart from many others, making it a film worthy of praise. I give it 2 okays, and you can quote me on that. Well, that's it for this episode of Silver Screen Slam. Join me next episode when I'll be reviewing the most famous Japanese animated film in the history of this show, 1988's apocalyptic roller coaster ride, Akira. If you enjoy the show, feel free to drop me a line on my social media outlets at the bottom of your screen. After all, my ego could use a bit more of a boost. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Jake Brown, and I'll see you at the cinema. Whenever you're ready. Ready, Petty. Message that is simple yet complex. Accusing yet blah. That the film was actually not based off of a real Texas family full of butchers and cannibals, but actually instead was a Just give me a thumbs up. Yeah, that's fine. Okay.